In the second part of this lecture, we're going to discuss how linguists study language. We have three main objectives: to identify what kind of data linguists use in the study of language, to outline the processes and methods of linguistic data analysis, and to describe the scientific method as it is applied to the study of language. Linguists in different subfields work from different theoretical perspectives, but most of them use the same types of data to draw on in formulating and testing these theories. First of all, because we're interested in how real language works in the real world, recordings of naturally occurring speech serve as primary data for many types of linguistic analysis. Conversational data can be analyzed using auditory techniques, in other words, by ear and from transcripts, or using computer techniques, including the analysis of the physical properties of sounds and morphosyntactic properties of whole utterances. We can also study how humans understand and interpret language by studying their responses to linguistic stimuli. One of the oldest methods here is to use the grammaticality or well-formedness judgments, where subjects are presented with utterances in a particular language and asked to judge them as acceptable, somewhat acceptable, or not acceptable. Recent developments in technology also allow us to use eye tracking, functional MRIs, and electroencephalography to measure physiological and neurological responses to language stimuli. Syntacticians and semanticists also often analyze the structure and meaning of utterances that might be produced by an idealized speaker or listener of the language. Let's try our hand at a very basic morphological analysis of data from the Turkish language. Here is a very small data set. The word deniz means sea, as in a large body of water. The phrase to the sea is translated as denize, and of the sea, denizen. Denizde means in the sea, and denizler makes the plural seas. My sea is denizim, and his or her sea is denizi. What do all of these words have in common? Clearly, there is the root deniz that means the sea or maybe ocean. To say to the sea, we add the vowel a to the end of the root. It is logical to conclude that that ending, we call it a suffix, marks the same concept as the preposition to in English. To say of, we add the suffix in to the root. To say in, we add the suffix de. To make a plural noun, we add the suffix ler. To say my, we add the suffix im. And to say his or her, we add the suffix e. Apparently, there is no distinction between his and her in terms of the suffix. This information allows us to form a hypothesis about how Turkish nouns work. In Turkish, nouns add suffixes to show different relationships to other words, to show plurality, and to show possession. These suffixes are a for to, in for of, de for in, ler for plural, im for my, and e for his or her. But this is only a hypothesis. We need to get it tested on more data to make sure that this kind of rule applies to all Turkish nouns and not just the noun deniz, sea. So let's look at more data then. Here we have the word fil, elephant. Our hypothesis seems to hold just fine since all the suffixes work out as we predicted. Fil, elephant, filet, to the elephant, filin, of the elephant, filde, in the elephant, filer, elephants, filim, my elephant, and fili, his or her elephant. But just in case, let's give it another test, now with the word kutu, box. Kutuya, to the box. Kutunun, of the box. Kutuda, in the box. Kutular, boxes. Kutum, my box. And kutusu, his or her box. Uh-oh. the hypothesis we made about the noun declension, this is what this process of changing noun forms is called, does not seem to hold on this word. Some suffixes seem similar. For example, da instead of de to indicate the concepts we express in English with the preposition in, and instead of im to indicate my. But some suffixes are very different. It appears that our hypothesis needs modification. Think about how words like Denise and feel on one hand are different from the words like coutu on the other. You may notice that Denise and feel end in a consonant and coutu ends in a vowel. We can hypothesize two things. In Turkish, nouns add specific suffixes to show relationships with other words, to show plurality, or to show possession. And the second thing is different noun types make different suffixes, although sometimes the suffixes share some similarities. We could test this hypothesis further, but we won't for the sake of time. The process we went through gives a good preview of how the scientific method works in linguistic analysis. We start by collecting the data. We examine the data and notice what kind of patterns occur in it. Based on these patterns, we formulate a hypothesis about how a particular feature in the given language works. To make sure that this hypothesis describes a more general feature or function, we test it on more data. Based on what we get from the testing, we may need to modify the hypothesis to account for all the data we have examined so far. If needed, we repeat the process with more data. Using this scientific approach, linguists describe patterns, which they call rules, in particular languages and across different languages in the world. They explain why the patterns function the way they do and whether there is a rational basis for variation across languages. Linguists do not prescribe how people should speak or how languages should work. Linguists would no more try to dictate how people should speak than physicists would try to dictate how gravity should work, or chemists how chemical reactions should occur. From a linguistic point of view, all languages and all their varieties are equally valid means of communication. None are more beautiful or logical or expressive or anything else than other languages. Beauty, logical expressiveness are subjective judgments. Basic linguistics, the subject we're introducing ourselves to in this course, is an objective science. In the next lecture, we're going to explore the foundations of one subfield of linguistic science, phonetics.